The Arkansas Environment and the EPA, a pushback. The Arkansas Environment and the PSC, the go-ahead. The Arkansas Razorbacks and the UA trustees, the go-ahead. And the Arkansas job market, what lies ahead. But first, the state's largest school district and its superintendent. Arkansas Week is next.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
This is Arkansas Week.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Arkansas Week. We'll get to the roundtable in just a moment, but first, a new school year and the man in charge of the state's largest public school district, Dr. Michael Poore. Thanks very much for being with us. You've had a few months now to settle in to the job. How do you see it being appointed by the state?
Well, first off,
how much elbow room do you have?
First, I'm just Mike Poore. I don't want to give myself a doctorate that I didn't deserve, so just Mike Poore.
Well, all right.
Next, it's been a really...
I conferred it, so go ahead.
It's been a really interesting transition and a very aggressive transition, you know, of being named in April and then now having school start. So I would tell you that we've hit the ground running and tried to be very aggressive in terms of entering into the community and really trying to listen and learn from the community, from our staff, from parents, from community leaders. And I hope that the plan that was executed in terms of an entry plan has created a visibility factor, has created a greater awareness for me, and hopefully gained some trust in terms of the work that we need to do all together to move Little Rock forward.
What are parents telling you? You've been out listening. What are they telling you?
Well, on the positive side, the things that they're most proud of is they're very proud of the staff that serves at the school and really believe that the staff cares about children and wants to do the best for our students. They also are proud of just being a part of Little Rock. I can't tell you how many people, and I think it's maybe unique because of the size of the city and it's more urban, that they went through Little Rock school system, and so they deeply care about the school district, which is a great thing to utilize as a new superintendent, that everybody really has passion. On the side for concerns, I think that, you know, first and foremost, that almost out of the tongue of every person is we want to gain local control back. A second thing, they want transparency in terms of the financial decisions that are upcoming for our district. And then the final thing that you hear probably more from parents than anyone else is what do we do to create secure and safe campuses and also connectivity. So it's, and you may say that connectivity doesn't fit with safety, but it's all about it. You know, how do young people feel connected into the environment, have multiple adults that really care about them, and that they have friends that are also there that are supportive.
Do you have a time? Of course, it's not entirely up to you by any stretch of the imagination, but do you envision a timeline for a return of local control?
Well, the very first time that can actually happen, and many don't recognize that this is set up by state statute, we have to have the test scores to come out of the takeover. So the very first time that could happen would be July. So we have to be aggressive in our plan to execute to enhance performance for the current 5 schools that are under distress. But then we have another batch of schools that are either in priority or focus status, over 20 schools in that area, that we also got to make sure that they do not drop in performance and that we actually enhance their performance along with the distress schools. But the distress schools, those 5, that's the key to gain local control back.
When there are always a lot of issues involving the Little Rock School District, always a lot of litigation. But there are some new elements in entering into it, and your predecessor in this position, throughout the length of his tenure, and prior to that, when he was on the board, expressed growing concern about the proliferation or the addition to the landscape of charter schools and the, whether you want to call it a drain or not, that they created on the conventional system. Mm-hmm. How do you see the landscape now?
Well, there's a reality that decisions have been made to enhance charter school slots for the charters that are already in Little Rock, and that's a fact at this point. So, my job right now is to do everything I can to make sure that we compete. And I think the initial area to compete in is we've got to improve academic performance. So we've got some things that we can be very proud of in terms of academic performance, but we need to even get better and improve in this area. A second thing that we don't do probably well enough right now is that we're not marketing and recruiting and sharing the good things that are coming out of Little Rock to the degree that we need to instill confidence in this community to say we want our kids to come to Little Rock School. So we've got to be more aggressive, and we specifically lose more students at the middle school age than any other spot in terms of the continuum of education. So we really got to target middle school families, those that are going to come into middle school in 6th grade, to have them just come onto our campus. Look at the academic environment. Look at the environment in terms of its safety. And I think we also have to enhance programming. We're working on programming specifically at the middle school level to involve community, to create more project-based, problem-based learning environments. I think our principals are very excited about it. I think the business community is excited about supporting us in that effort.
Do you view charters ultimately, though, as a threat to the order?
Well, I think that we have to go compete. And so in some ways, when you say that you're competing, you're looking at it as that here's another entity that wants to have your students. We don't want to necessarily give those students up. So in that regard, yes, the threat. The other thing that we have to understand is that parents seek choices. And what do we do with even in the Little Rock school system to provide them choices that are attractive to them, to make them say their best option for their students' education is the Little Rock School District?
And the voucher program, there's a new element now. Enacted, I think, in the 15 regular session. That may not be on a scale yet, anyway, as charters. But is that a profound concern to you?
I think administrators in general have a concern to monitor that situation. Right now, just for the audience, making sure they understand what came in on vouchers is really to provide opportunities for special needs families to go towards private schools. That's one of the most complex and challenging aspects of public education, is to serve students with special needs in a sound method, and it costs a lot of money to do that and to do it well. That's one of our big things that we have to deal with within our own school budgets. So this whole effort of how this will go, it's my understanding that there's very few students that actually have looked, or families, to pursue that option. So we'll have to kind of wait and see how that plays out.
Well, as an educator, are you fearful that the door's open now, the barn door's open, in terms of vouchers?
Well, I'm not sensing that, but I think that I could speak for myself and for other superintendents that we're going to be leery of that and monitor that situation. I don't think we would advocate for any reduction of funds to come out of our current budgets. We need resources to do the job well, and we've got to use the resources that we've currently been given and use those efficiently.
You had a perch in not perch, but a position, much of your career was spent in Northwest Arkansas. When, having traveled the district now, or been a part of the district for some time now, how big an element is race? To what extent is it at the very core of the difficulties in the Little Rock School District system?
Well,
Pulaski County, for that matter.
I'll have a twofold answer for that. I mean, first is that we are primarily a district that has minority children that we serve. So, when one of the things that I asked all of our principals when they came in is, what is the capacity of your building? What is the makeup of your building in terms of its ethnicity? What is the free and reduced lunch? Well, time and time again, the ethnicity was 75, 85, 90% African American, and then 5, 10, 20% Hispanic, and the Caucasian number was really pretty minimal. Our free and reduced lunch in this district typically exceeds 75%. So that is the reality of our school district. So in terms of race relations, I actually don't see that as an issue. I think that educating of children that are coming from backgrounds where resources aren't as available. That's really the issue. How do you support students and families who have tough economic situations that then can impact the educational environment?
It's Friday night. You've got divided loyalties.
Well,
tonight, anyway.
Central High plays Bentonville West, and so I have a great deal of pride about Bentonville West because that was the second high school that we opened, and that took a lot of effort to get people to approve the tax measure and then to go execute opening that school, and I'm proud of that staff. But tonight it's all about Central, and I'm going to be behind Scooter Register and his team, and very excited about getting to be in the stands on the Central side and supporting Little Rock schools.
Well, may the best squad win.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for being with us. Good luck.
I appreciate this opportunity.
We'll be right back. And we're back, and we're going to begin with the environment with Jacob Kaufman, KUAR Public Radio in Central Arkansas, Wesley Brown, Arkansas, or rather Talk Business and Politics, and Hoyt Purvis, independent journalist and author. And thanks to everybody for coming in. Jacob, after press time last week anyway, we got more on the Haze rule.
Right, and there's so many different Environmental Protection Agency rules that Arkansas is in various stages of implementing that's come from the Obama administration's EPA. This one's, Entergy says, will cost them about $2 billion to basically retrofit some of their older coal-fired power plants. The Sierra Club of Arkansas helped file this suit to help implement the EPA rule, and it's supposed to reduce haze over some wilderness areas in Arkansas, which is not just about looking at the pretty wilderness areas, but also, of course, about your health. So.
Yeah, I guess the big thing is you'll be able to see the stars better. They're going to put scrubbers on what they call scrubbers on these big, huge things that clean the air from the power plants, and I think so that the haze won't cross state lines. I think that was the big issue, is that one state shouldn't have to deal with another state's pollution.
And of course, this is very popular with the business community.
Well, I noticed that the governor referred to this as federal overreach, and obviously there are similar feelings amongst many of the people, the businesses that would be directly involved in this. Entergy, for example.
Yeah, and what's surprising is also our Department of Environment and Quality also in their press release, they came out with the same press release that the governor, that they were basically agreeing with the governor along with the Attorney General, and that the governor also indicated that possibly the Attorney General is looking at legal options to consider in this case, just as with the other plan, the Clean Power Plan, which is actually more, they say is more onerous than this one.
It's not always said, but underlying all of this is fundamentally the Hutchinson administration and throughout the various state agencies, they reject most of the science coming from the federal government on issues like pollution and climate change.
And along with this, we have pipeline news as well.
Yeah, there's been a number. Diamond Pipeline out of a joint venture for Plains All-American and in Houston, one of the largest pipeline companies in the United States, and Valero Corporation, which is the largest refinery. They are building a pipeline that comes into around the Fort Smith and Sebastian County and zigzags across the state and goes into just across the river in Crittenden County into Memphis. This pipeline will deliver crude oil, what's called light, sweet, crude, West Texas Intermediate, and it will deliver across
the good stuff.
Yeah, the really good stuff, the high premium grade crude oil, and it will deliver across some of the most pristine areas in Arkansas. So some of the neighbors were concerned that if this pipeline breaks, but the state approved it, the U.S. Corps of Engineers approved it, so it's a go. They're going to probably get started before the end of the year. and this project is at a cost of $900 million, or just short of $1 billion.
Yeah,
so.
I'm surprised really that it hasn't received more attention than it has, because this is a very, as you indicate, a very large project, a 440-mile pipeline crossing five rivers and from running from Oklahoma to the Valero refinery in Memphis. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing, I talked to some of the people up in I guess where the counties, I think Ashley County, where they're not Ashley, but some of the counties where it will cross, and this pipeline will actually come close to the other several other pipelines. So this one lady has one pipeline on her property crossing another pipeline, so it's pretty interesting.
No, the only real objection came from the Clarksville utility company, their water and light company. They're the only real government agency that really did anything about this, and the pipeline company had some concessions that they offered, things like additional safety measures and a few different turns, but Clarksville is worried about the spill leaking to their water supply.
Well, as Hoyt mentioned, this one, I don't want to say flew under the radar, but it certainly didn't get a great deal of attention. Is it likely now to get even more attention, say, in the courts?
I talked to like Jacob said, the Clarksville city officials were the only one who were considering some legal avenues. There may be some private landowners who are concerned about this issue, but so far, there haven't been anything in the courts. The State Public Service Commission has took only two weeks for the State Public Service Commission to approve it, which is probably a new record for approval project at large. So I don't foresee any legal issues unless something happens during the construction of this pipeline.
Well, there is some other construction in the pipeline, and I don't know, it took longer than 2 weeks, or maybe it didn't, I don't know. But anyway, we're talking about over $100 million in bonds now for a new stadium expansion up at Fayetteville with minimal dissent, I guess. Maybe notable for being any dissent. I don't know. Hoyt, your old alma mater there.
The trustees kind of gave the final stamp of approval this week to something that's now been in the works for a while to expand the Reynolds Razorback Stadium. It's a big project. Questions were raised, particularly by former Governor and Senator David Pryor, but the vote of the trustees was 8-2, and it seems to be all systems go at this point.
It's a $120 million or so bond. I think maybe $160 million is what it could total.
Yeah, the total cost, yeah.
But so it's pretty expensive, but the actual expansion is only going to have around 4,000 more seats. So it's not all going to those 4,000 seats. There are also going to be a lot of luxury type updates in the stadium.
That's
4,000 expensive
that's
seats.
The key. That's the key right there, yes.
And of course, the debt, as with any bond issue, the debt service is part of the discussion.
Right, yeah. But, I guess the big thing the state trustees have said, or the Arkansas trustees have said, it was this is not going to cost taxpayers anything. And that you can kind of say that, but as you said, it's a bond issue. It's not directly affecting taxpayers, but we could be on the hook if it doesn't go so well.
That could go to well in excess of the actual construction cost.
Right.
If the market.
You're right. Yeah.
If the market for football goes south.
But I think what we'll see, and Hoyt we talked about this before the show, is that this may mean that more of the football games will flow up to Fayetteville, and we'll see less of the Razorbacks in Central Arkansas, which is something that I think a lot of people will decry.
Well, it's definitely going to happen. It's a question of whether Little Rock retains maybe one game a year for a while, but we've already seen that trend in evidence in recent years.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Pryor's concern was not only fiscal, he said, but philosophical.
Right. Yeah. I think his big issue, and a lot of people have raised this, and you see these is that. Are we going to put sports ahead of academia, and this putting much money into expanding the stadium, where as you may tuition costs are going up, and so that philosophical kind of debate over in Arkansas, as Arkansas is continuing to expand in athletics and continue to pour money into athletics, and from salaries to facilities to everything. So it's an interesting debate.
This too at a time when higher ed can't really, is going to have to cope with a new funding formula, and probably no greater share of general revenues, or if there is any increase, it won't be substantial.
Yeah, I think when the session start, I think a lot of schools are already talking about, how are we going to tighten our budgets, or there's probably going to be some discussion from the state colleges of raising tuition almost every year now. So, and going into the legislation, I don't think they're going to get a bigger cut of funding. So it's an interesting dynamic that's going on.
All right, on to the economy. We got, after we taped last Friday's program, Wes, we got the August revenue report from DFNA.
Yeah, the first 2 months of fiscal 2017, the fiscal year for Arkansas starts July 1st. So the first 2 months have not been that good, not that rosy. The numbers have come in below forecasts and below year-ago levels, and revenues are down across the board. Sales and use taxes, individual income tax, and corporate income tax. So the state officials were, kind of not so worried about it, and saying, this is just the beginning of the year, but and revenues will increase as we go into the holiday season. So we'll have to look at those numbers and see. But for right now, it's especially after, most of the surplus from last year has been, pointed to other things. It'll be interesting to see if we'll continue to see the revenue growth we've seen in the last 2.5 years.
Well, what's underlying that? Well, we're still at, 3.9 unemployment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I still think you've seen consumers being cautious about going out and spending money, even in going into the Labor Day weekend. Some of the back-to-school retail sales were below year-ago levels and not according to expectations. So I think what you're seeing is that consumers are cautious, and it'll be interesting to see if those revenue numbers continue to will come back and continue to grow year over year. So it's going to be tough because sales are down.
Well, just to add to that, sort of in keeping with what you just said, the governor described this as somewhat puzzling. And in a sense, that's true, because the overall atmosphere, by and large, is relatively good. Unemployment, as was mentioned. So clearly, it's going to be interesting to see if there really is a trend here, if this is just sort of a glitch, due to a variety of factors that are not necessarily going to continue.
Yeah.
Okay, then go ahead.
And the other thing is that we got a couple big issues coming up, a big economic reports coming up. We've got the GDP report coming up at the end of the month, and also we'll have to see if the unemployment, Arkansas is at 3.9, if it continues to stay below 4%. So those are two things that we'll watch, and if those start rising, then it'll be, those revenues may continue to be below year-ago levels and below.
Well, the Fed obviously continues to watch it as well, and we had a Beige book report out this past week that's worth noting.
Yeah, it is, and I actually talked to State Economic Development Mike Preston about this. The low unemployment is one of the things that it's causing is that it's tough for employers to find qualified and the workers they need for their particular niche, and so. This tightening job market, why it's good, it still has some, he said that in Stuttgart, there are 175 jobs that need to be filled because they can't find the right workers for those jobs. So it'll be interesting to see if that job market kind of loosens or if the numbers go up, but it's a good thing, but it's also a difficult thing for the state of Arkansas.
Well, the country's in the market for a new president because the Constitution says it has to. We had another eventful week.
Never any shortage of interesting developments in the presidential campaign. And, of course, we had the somewhat bizarre episode with the Libertarian candidate who had actually, Mr. Johnson, been polling in the double digits, and it seemed like he might be a real factor. And, indeed, he may yet be a real factor. But clearly, he was found somewhat caught short with regard to Aleppo and the fact that that's the center of the refugee crisis in Syria. And then we had the forum involving the two major candidates on the Commander-in-Chief forum, and you know, from being friendly with Putin, or who said what about Iraq sooner or later, and the generals are rubble. So there's a lot coming out of that. I think it's particularly interesting that Mr. Trump does not seem to be able to concede that he did not oppose the war, going to war in Iraq early on. In fact, he said at one point, well, the 04 article in Esquire, well, that's right. The war started in 03, you know, but that's kind of what we're dealing with in this campaign.
Well, and more, go ahead.
Well, since we mentioned Gary Johnson, we'll also throw in Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. She has a warrant out for her arrest this week for protesting a pipeline. We're not going to see any candidates in Arkansas do anything like that.
And there continue to be headaches for Secretary Clinton on Capitol Hill, particularly, as well as on the campaign trail, about those D emails.
Well, it's almost the same story every week, but it's always a little bit different. Yeah. It's a new batch of emails coming out. Same arguments are playing out. She's been addressing it pretty much the same way, but it really hasn't stopped her critics from criticizing her.
The one thing that was a little different this week is that there was sort of some backtracking on what former Secretary General Powell said, because in fact it does appear that he did indeed suggest or possibly advise early on that she take a sort of a roundabout way of dealing with the communications, including classified or possibly classified information.
Oh, so what do we wait? We got what, Wes? You counted 50 days.
Yeah, we got actually about today is the 9th, so we got actually about 60 days left until November 8th, and you know, I think everybody's looking toward the debates, the upcoming debates, the 3 debates, and I think kind of now everybody's trying to infill with some news. But I think once those 3 debates start, you'll start to get a clearer picture of what direction, who's leading, and what direction the country may be going in selecting a new commander-in-chief.
Well, clearly, Trump has gained ground in some of the polls. You know, it's a mixed picture at best, but certainly in some cases he has gained ground.
Yeah, so in some polls he's actually leading. I think the CNN poll and another poll where he was actually taking a small marginal lead. So.
Yeah, that's the national number. Keep your eye on the college, as always. We're out of time. Thanks to you guys for coming in. As always, thanks to you for watching, and we will see you next week.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.